Hey folks, welcome and thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar. We've got you for just around about an hour and we'll definitely be looking to keep on time today. Absolute pleasure to step you through our topic today, assessment in the age of AI, rethink, redesign and restore. I'm quite excited about this one. I know a lot of people are talking about AI. We've ourselves brought in experts over previous webinars and stuff. This approach, some of the ideas, some of the things and conversation that we're going to have today, I don't think you'll have heard before. This one's quite a different approach. So really keen to have you participate, and good to see you all with us for the session. So let's get in. First off, a quick acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we work and live. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past, present and future. Okay, quick introductions. For those of you that haven't met me, my name's Alex Fuller. I'm the head of customer success here at Cloud Assess. And today for your webinar, I'm going to be joined by one of my colleagues, Miles. Miles is our subject matter expert today, and Miles works in my team with our fantastic customers. So welcome, Miles. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks, mate.
Awesome. Quick overview of the agenda. So today's webinar, we're looking at giving a bit of a review of the bigger picture. We're going to get into some of the problems, some of the challenges, some of the scenarios and case studies that we're hearing, seeing and come across, and potential pitfalls. We're going to have a look at some really robust strategies that hopefully you can look to take away and engage with. I think there's some real value in some of the pieces there. We'll have a look at the results that these drive and provide, and we'll wrap up with a bit of a sort of key takeaway and a Q&A session. As we go through the webinar, definitely want some participation today. We don't have all the answers, don't profess to. We really want to join in with the community piece here, take all your experiences, give you the opportunity to share your thoughts and feelings, and post the event. Definitely connect with us. There's going to be a quick email go out, but LinkedIn and the like, reach out to us if you've got really useful insights or want to share and get some further sort of input. Happy to participate in any way we can post the event. During the session, you can comment, and loads of you have picked up on that already, which is great to see. In the comment section here, jump in. It's a little bit restrictive in the fact that we can't reply directly to any threads or anything else, but wherever there's some key set of questions, Helen, who organises this and should take all the credit, is sat in the background. She'll mark those for us to come back to for the Q&A session. We'll also have just a couple of polls. It's not going to be death by poll or anything else, just a couple of polls which are powered by Slido. When we're using the Slido, you can just simply scan the QR code if you've got a mobile phone or a mobile device with you today. If you haven't, just open a new browser tab, go to slido.com, and then your participant entry code is just 3502381. So definitely get prepped for those. When we hit those slides where you're going to have polls or word clouds and stuff, it'd be really good if we can get some really nice experience shares, get your thoughts and feelings, and really just temperature check at a couple of points as we go. So there's the housekeeping. Let's jump into our first Slido. So the poll here, how confident are you that your current assessment processes could detect or deter AI-generated responses? So what, just as people get ready and jump in to have a look. Okay, interesting as they come through. So you can see the results live. We've got 24, 30 people. Those numbers are racking up really quickly. This is great. I love the fact that you're all getting into this. Wonderful. Okay, got an early leader that stayed there all the way, Miles. Not surprising, I don't think.
It's interesting to see that the how we see AI in assessments, what they're using it for. hopefully today's session we can kind of boil into it a bit more.
Yeah, it's certainly a changing landscape all the time. Lots of new pieces come to challenges with the AI models. So I think we've got some very open, honest sort of response there. It's great to see as well. A few of us think we're confident. We've got this nailed. Really looking forward to those sort of sharing that experience with us as well as we move forward into the Q&A and stuff. Definitely good. Gosh, there's only 1% that is gone, don't want to think about it. I kind of relate to you 1%ers out there. Can be a little bit overwhelming and, very, very daunting at the same time, I think, for some of us. So again, I think that 1% could be very open and honest. Awesome. Okay, so we'll move into it. We've got over 120 people vote on that one, which is amazing. Resoundingly, there's a good majority there that says we're not necessarily confident that our current assessment can really support us detecting or deterring that AI generated response. Bit of a leading question when we talk about deter perhaps as well. So let's move into our next piece. I'll hand to you, Miles, to talk us through.
So yeah, thanks Alex. So this little quote kind of stayed with me throughout my entire time in the vet sector. And I liked it for one particular reason, and it was the idea of innovation in vets. And not just the idea of it, but the absolute necessity that we need to keep innovating in the vet sector. So everything around this particular webinar is exploring a topic that requires us to innovate, and it requires us to evolve what we think about when it comes to assessment. And the idea of unlearning what we may have thought how assessments were done in the past and relearning processes for the future. So that's what this webinar is really about, is about opening your eyes to the questions that are asked around the process. And as we go through the webinar and look at the strategies, some may become applicable, and we learn that it's the combination of approaches that's really important. So innovation is the key word behind everything we talk about for the next 45 minutes or so.
Awesome. And that's a great introduction to sort of really unpack our topic. I couldn't agree more with you, Miles. This is kind of like a very different approach, perhaps, to some of the previous AI webinars that I've attended and listened to and stuff. Like I say, we're not coming from a position with all the answers. I don't think anybody truthfully is in that space just yet. Some great solutions out there, some great methodology that's being applied. But this is really about getting us thinking and asking ourselves the questions, challenging our beliefs, and looking at varied approaches. The approach isn't necessarily a one size fits all, and certainly has lots of different facets to it as well, I think. But yeah, super excited to work through this with you, Miles. So obviously, assessment in the age of AI. The bigger picture. Miles, talk us through what the concept is.
So this is the larger kind of understanding around how AI is being part of our sector, really. To mitigate it, what I hear commonly from people is, what's the one step that we need to do to stop this from happening? And the first part of this lesson is to understand that it's not one step, it's multiple steps. And they all need to be there in order for AI and assessment to be consolidated or harmonious. So the first part is policy in general. So organizational policy in this regards. And it could be ways to define AI use, AI misuse, academic conduct, and so on. So there being some sort of overarching understanding that the organization follows. The second piece of the puzzle is education around the trainer's team. So the trainer and assessors that are working in the organization understand what AI is, how it's being used, and also understand what positive and negative use looks like. And then the third piece of the puzzle is the design of the assessment itself. So any one of these pieces by itself won't work. All three kind of need to be there. And this particular webinar will only focus on the assessment design part of it, because that alone is a topic in itself. So that's what we'll look at today. But keep in mind that this is part of a larger picture that requires multiple moving parts across the organization itself.
Awesome. And a great point to make there, Miles. You're absolutely right. You know, the assessment, both the assessment design, the assessment process is absolutely one of the pillars of this requirement. Doesn't ever and should never stand alone. As you've said, this is absolutely going to be our key focus of today. But as we go through and share experience and stuff, I've seen some great policies being produced. I've seen some updates and amendments to providers' policy that looks to, really address this. I've seen some great upskilling, some great PD that's been available from some of our partners, like Kerry Buttery has done a fantastic job in the education space around AI. Toby Jones as well. There's some great authorities out there that are all chipping in and giving us access to some fantastic upskill in that space. Today, like I say, quite a different slant. We're going to focus on that design, very focused on assessment, but awesome. Okay, so the problem, Miles.
Well, when we look at where AI is kind of coming in, and if we break it down into the terms that we understand, let's use the terms knowledge and performance. We're seeing it appear more and more in the knowledge assessment side of things. The performance assessment still feels quite robust because we are watching them learn and do the work. We are watching them complete and perform. But it's that capture of knowledge evidence where AI is kind of coming into the picture. And that's what I'm seeing as a pattern across a variety of training products, across a variety of training packages. Being in this role helps me see a lot of the vet sector. And that's the common thread that I can see. So if we localize our understanding to the knowledge evidence capture of any unit, then we can start talking about how we can introduce strategies to restore the authenticity as well as validity and currency and sufficiency around knowledge capture. And that's where we're kind of looking at this one. So if you keep progressing through, Alex, you can see.
Just before we move from this slide, when we're talking about the knowledge capture and stuff, I don't know if people keep abreast of some of the latest advancements in AI, but I personally was reading an article at the weekend. There's a browser called Comet browser, very AI focused tool, new to the mix, and that browser is literally capable of completing exams, tests, etc. online. Canvas has been highlighted as one of the tools where it's been applied, and it literally doesn't have to have any prompts. It reads the content and it makes responses to that content. Scary stuff. These are all the tools out there that might be in the hands of our learners. So yeah, really, really interesting, but also raises more and more concern every day. Awesome. Sorry, to the next piece.
So I like this particular slide because the title was something that kind of made us laugh a little bit, was this idea of the written assessment. And this is kind of where we're seeing the majority of AI being used, is in written assessments. And this is kind of what's leading us into the strategies, is how can we redesign our written assessments or even our knowledge assessments so that can either not be written or not require AI. So what I find more and more, the more I talk to people, the more I see this, is that the assessments are filled with questions that AI can answer. So why are we asking them in the first place? We need to kind of think about this in our knowledge assessments. And this is especially so with things like quizzes or surface level assessments that require recall or patterns. So this is where we're seeing it more and more. So hopefully, as we keep exploring this topic, we can see how we can restore these particular types of assessments.
Yeah, for sure. And those particular types of assessment, we're not necessarily saying there isn't a place for it. What we're saying is, let's look at why we use them, how we use them. Let's look at the design of it. and making sure that still in this new age with this new challenge, that we have fit for purpose resources, tools, and instruments on our side. Very good, yeah. Okay, we're going to jump in to our next Slido. This one's a bit of a word cloud. With a bit of an introduction to the topic now, some of the sort of scene setting on the problem. Let's get your thoughts. Again, you can jump in slido.com. You can scan the QR code if you've got a mobile device. Let's get in there. We've got a few of you in there, kind of sprung this one on you. What are your biggest challenge with assessment right now? Obviously, we're trying to look through the from the lens with the AI challenge. Somebody's definitely got the right code there, which is awesome. Okay, so authenticity. Yeah. Okay. Cyber risks, validity. Keep them coming, folks. Expect lots on this cloud. They'll get bigger when they get more upvotes, when more of you agree. And it's not necessarily, this exercise isn't about agreeing, it's about getting all of your different thoughts, all of your different pieces together. Yeah. Design principles, love it. We're definitely coming from that perspective today. Biggest challenge for assessment right now? Anything jumping out there, Miles, that you think, ooh, love to explore?
Well, I like this because authenticity is the heart of this, and we could see everything around it that kind of causes that to be compromised in a way.
Yeah, I actually think this is working out really, really well. You absolutely.
Well, yeah. Well, what's really good about this? There's a whole folder of literature that kind of informed this webinar, and that literature is available if you ask for it after the session. And almost every article in there talks about authenticity in education.
Yeah.
So this was the motivation and kind of the idea behind every strategy is how can we restore authenticity to what we see in front of us, what the student submits. We can say to ourselves, yep, this feels authentic, as opposed to, well, I see it some from time to time where the assessor has now become this policeman, and their job is to only police people on AI and never really assess the student anymore. I don't think that's what we want our jobs to be. We don't want to be policing the student. We want to be facilitating their learning, helping them be assessed. And I think that's what we're all trying to achieve from this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really, really good insight as well. What do we want out of our roles as educators? What do we want to have our focus on? And yeah, that policing mentality, or that sort of regimented sort of yes, no, good, bad, in or out, doesn't really exist in what motivates most vet professionals. So I think it's an absolutely sort of nail on the head moment for me. When leaders take this away, they take it into their teams, etc., to get any sort of adoption and commitment to making meaningful change, we need to have the buy-in. So identifying barriers and what the motivation is to do the best job is definitely a big enabler in this change, for sure. Awesome. Okay, so we got lots of stuff, like you say, authenticity definitely at the heart of it. I do feel there's a bit of a tone there as well of removing that innovation, that critical thinking, and getting a fine balance. There definitely is a fine balance to be had with all of this as well. Cool. So getting back to the root of what we do and why we do it, Miles.
So this question, why do we assess students? This is kind of where this started. So we were able to test this over the course of years when we deployed a particular set for a course. And it all started with this question, why are we assessing the students? What are we trying to prove? And the concept of knowledge, what is knowledge, was asked. What exactly is it knowledge? And how do we know that the student has gained knowledge? And this was a very expansive topic. So to bring it back to making it easy and malleable, we asked ourselves, what are we hoping to tell ourselves when we look at a student's submitted work? What are we hoping to capture? And in this particular Cert 4 case study that we did it in, it was the proof that the student could work without supervision in their future role. That's what I wanted to capture in the assessment. So that tone sat in the underlying of every assessment, behind every question, behind every task. It was the capture of proof that the student could work without supervision. And that's what colored the assessments from then on. That was the foundation of it. So establishing that at the very beginning, before you start building assessments, ask yourself, what are you trying to prove? Is it something very specific that you want to see the student is capable of understanding? If so, then make that obvious. Make it very clear, then that's what the assessment's about. Because too often, students don't understand why they're being assessed. They know that they have to be assessed. They just don't know or understand why they're being asked a certain question. So their first instinct is just to run away and find the answer. But if they understand why they're being assessed, it pulls it away from that answer searching mode into a more, okay, what can I say to satisfy this question? So this is the first step in pulling it away from AI, is to make it less of an AI focused task and something that the student wants to talk about or answer.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree. When we have these kind of discussions as well, it's very quickly sort of overshadowed by some where they say, well, the reason why we assess or what are we trying to approve is we're meeting the unit requirements. That's our job as an RTO. We have to build assessment instruments, tools that meet the unit standards. We have to deliver within the frameworks. We have to align to industry requirement. Now, all of that may be true. Absolutely, one of the core key requirements of being compliant. But the purpose behind it, the reason why those standards exist and everything else, is the message that you need to not lose when you're trying to convey it, I think is what you're trying to say here. Get that whole purpose and reasoning around your unique quality product as a provider, and make sure that it resonates through everything you're doing within your assessment. Awesome.
Make it so obvious that the student sees it every time they open the assessment. They read something and they can see that purpose behind it. You can tell it to them at the very beginning on the assessment. The purpose of this assessment is to, and then you can say what it is you're trying to capture. And that alone helps the student realize, okay, this is what they want me to talk about. And that's one small step away from AI and one small step closer to the student.
Awesome. Couldn't agree anymore. Okay. So rethink, a new way forward. So we're talking about redesign, not just defend here. So design with AI in mind, not against it. What's that mean for us, Miles?
Well, this kind of goes back to that original Slido of that confidence, and some people saying they don't want to think about it. I know it's a funny response, but in a way, your assessment will echo that if you build it hoping that AI isn't being used. So what this one means is that whenever we write a question, whenever we write a task, we should assume that AI is available to the student. So if AI is available to the student, then we ought to avoid questions that AI can answer. So what that means is, let's avoid superficial questions and let's dig a little deeper. Because if we ask a question that AI can answer, the way I always saw it, if we can ask a question that AI can answer, then there's no point asking that question to begin with. So let's move away from that idea of, okay, surface level, what is, identify, and so on, and go a little bit deeper and ask a bit more of the student. Because the student is more capable than we give them credits. And considering assessment occurs after training, we hope that they are capable. So we have to assume that too. They're being trained. Let's ask something with a bit more depth to it that pulls it away from AI by another step and moves it back to the student by another step. And again, this kind of adds to that overarching idea of multiple processes at once.
Yeah, yeah, really like this this kind of conversation. Years ago, I was told by a really experienced and somebody that I give a lot of time to and feel that they're absolutely on the money. And they said to me, just because you have a compliant assessment doesn't mean you have a good one. And that's about sort of, is it still fit for purpose, even though compliance is the core requirement of what I've done? Have we missed the message and the purpose of the assessment sometimes? I think it's a really good way to say, let's not just write to the unit standard. Let's pick deeper. Let's get some really critical thinking, thought-provoking, engaging kind of questions, especially, and I suppose we're talking really around the theoretical, the knowledge components here, where AI is the bigger risk. Let's look into how we do that. Now, there's a couple of pieces in chat there that are coming through. And I love this one from Sharon. I knew somebody was going to throw this into us, Miles. What about over-assessing? If we're deeper, probing questions, leading questions, and the like, are we not in risk of over-assessing? And are we coming away from what our objective from a compliance perspective is to deliver to the units?
I saw that comment come through as well. So depth in the question is not the same as complexity of the question. I'll say that again. So the depth of the question isn't the same as the complexity of the question. So we can reformulate the question, which we'll see in a couple of slides, actually. I'll give you an example, because I'll try and illustrate this as we go, because it is quite abstract. Asking a question that requires a more human or experiential account doesn't add complexity to the question, but it does add depth to the question. So when we look at the slide, I think it's 2 or 3 slides from now, I'll give you an example of one and compare it to one that doesn't have depth, but they both have the same complexity.
Yeah, awesome. And I provoked it. I knew this was going to be a bit of a query and a question. And it's really, really valuable to talk about it, because when we talk about making practical changes, when we talk about what are we going to take away from this, we need to have those answers up front. We need to have that conversation. We need to have that on side. So yeah, awesome. Let's look at some core strategies. So this is reflecting on a course that Miles had a lot of input to, and a bit of a redesign. So we're going to really apply some practical strategies. We're going to talk around a lot of sort of personal experience as well in this one, and stuff that goes beyond just this one course as well. Okay, cool. So Miles, strategy 1, setting expectations.
So this is targeted straight for the people that say they don't want to think about it or they don't want to deal with it. The first part of it is dealing with it. So this first strategy echoes the larger picture. So if you imagine policy and trainer education kind of behind this first strategy is to set the expectations in the classroom. So whether it's a face-to-face classroom or a virtual classroom, be open with this from the very beginning. In fact, the orientation day for the Cert 4 course that we used, part of that orientation day was to talk about this and be open about it and say, this is how society is, this is how the world is. Let's be open and talk about what's good about it, what's bad about it, what do I expect as an assessor. And if we remind ourselves that we have adults in the classroom, then if you treat them as such and say, you guys are adults, you've paid to be here, let's be constructive with the next X number of months of education, a lot of the problems can be mitigated just from this one step alone of saying it's okay in this regard or it's not okay in this regard. Let's talk about some situations where you can use it and set that early. The earlier you do it, the more effective it'll be throughout the entire course.
Let me
So this works for short course or long course alike.
Let me put a challenge to you, Miles. We're talking there when we're talking about that orientation day, that kickoff day. We're talking about physical classrooms and face-to-face people, in this example. How do we do this in a different way when we're perhaps delivering remotely, when we're online? What approach is the approach different? What tools do we use to enable that in your experience?
Well, we have the tools available because of remote training, for example. That's e-learning based, I'm guessing. So
Well,
remote training.
yeah, could well be. We won't. Well, I'm sure we will unpack the debate around learning versus training as well. But I'm thinking in a scenario where the class is not physical in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where things like synchronous and asynchronous are in our favor. Synchronous is definitely better. So in real time with the student. So face to face or virtually real time. Asynchronous is our second option where it can be recorded and viewed. It takes more work to build these assets, but it's effective nevertheless. So it's not impossible, and it does stretch to the majority of cases of both mode and method. So setting this up, whether it's in real time as a pre-recorded kind of discussion, something that the learner can revisit and even watch as well, those are all ways to kind of capture the same outcome of opening this topic early in any course.
Yeah, love it. With the do's, obviously talk about AI. This is setting the expectation, being open. Go to training sessions, create those training environments and the like, and direct contact with your training team, your training providers. Absolutely, all big plus points to really setting those expectations for sure. Cool. Strategy 2: how we align with training.
So this is one of my favorite ones. So a pattern that I noticed a lot was that the knowledge assessment was quite often more aligned with the learner guide than the actual training of the unit. I always wondered this. I always wondered it and asked myself, why is that so? Why is the knowledge assessment about something that's so inhuman or without kind of experience? It's just a book, basically. It's a book report. Why is it not about the training that the student has actually experienced? And so that was one of the first steps in building knowledge assessments. When we wanted to ask them something that was experiential, we asked them of their experience of the training rather than their ability to comprehend a learner guide. So an example of that would be in a question, we would ask, based on the discussions in class, what are your thoughts about this? And it's a very personal question. So it's based on the experience of them being in class and being part of a discussion. And it's there based on their understanding of it afterwards in the actual assignment. So rather than saying, what is this, which is a very surface level question, and that bang goes straight into AI and comes back with an answer, we ask a different version of that question that has more depth to it and says, based on your experience in class, or based on the discussions in class, or based on the role plays we did in class, what is your understanding of concept A? And what that does, that same question can be thrown into AI, no doubt. What comes back is often very useless. And on another point, what it actually does is it takes the question away from AI being used in the first place. For example, if I asked Alex a question saying, what are 3 customer pain points? He will run away and put that into AI in a second because he'd rather just do that. But if I asked him a question saying, based on your experience as head of customer success, what have been the 3 biggest pain points for customers? And his mind automatically goes into his brain and goes, okay, what have I experienced over the last 13 years? I'd reckon these 3. And they've both answered the criteria. One of them was done by AI, and one's done because Alex used experience. So that was the difference in aligning with something more experiential, was we can ask them questions about their experience of the training. And that alone, again, brought another step away from AI and brought another step closer to the student giving a response that was theirs.
Awesome example. That definitely resonates as well. I can see it. And folks, the comments, the chat that's happening in the side there, I can't help but try and keep an eye over it. Helen's marking some up for the Q&A. We're definitely going to give those some airtime. It's fantastic engagement. I really do appreciate the inputs and the different insights for sure. It's exactly what we were hoping for. Moving on to strategy 3, make it real.
So this was another concept that we experimented with, which was narratives. So story-based assessments. So this is a heavy design idea where you look at the assessments across a variety of units or a variety of clusters, and you build a story through the course. So if you ask yourself, what is the most common type of student in your course? Is it someone who just hops in for a unit and hops out, or is it someone who starts at the beginning and goes to the end? Let's make it about that and make a story through the actual course, because while we could be hyper flexible and say any unit could be started first because every unit is granular, we could be more creative and say, let's start with this unit first and let's build a story that flows through the units. And you have the assessments talk to one another. So the first assessment obviously is the introduction of things in the first unit, but then the second unit's assessments echo the first, and the third echoes the second, and so on. So having this story that flowed through the units in a very human way gave the student an ability to understand the assessment. Because quite often an assessment, I noticed, was built in a vacuum. There was just a question, basically. There was no air around it. There was no context or any preamble that introduced the question. It was just a question that just went, bang, what is this? So being able to build a story arc through the course helped the student connect the assessment to something larger, as well as connect it to the stories that they would have heard in the training as well. Because the one thing I can remember is every trainer was a storyteller. So having that same narrative of the assessment made the assessment feel less like an assessment. It felt more like discovering and learning a story that you'll soon be part of in the future.
Awesome. Love it. And, you know, when we talk about contextualization of an assessment, surely when we're coming from this approach, years ago, a term very, very sort of widely used, that learner-centric approach. This is the root of it. This is what we're talking about. You know, when we approach training and assessment with a learner-centered approach, centric approach, this is absolutely the stuff that should be in there. This is delivering fit for purpose, a robust assessment. Absolutely. Cool. Great experience again there, Miles. It's super stoked to have you talk us through this one.
Okay, so
rubrics,
yeah, this one's interesting. Oh, so I was just looking at this one before the session as well, because I remembered this experience really vividly. I remember my first version of my assessment was really poorly received because there was no clarity to the student about what they had to do. So the first half of the assessment that talked about what they had to talk about, that was super clear, that was rich, it had detail and context, but then there was nothing to guide the students. And we asked ourselves, okay, every question needs a marking guide, but the marking guide is often invisible to the student. And it is very easy for the student to sit there and look at just words on the page and ask themselves, what does the assessor want me to do? So this is when we started dipping into more larger topics around the tertiary sector, around rubrics. And we saw that rubrics were actually being used throughout multiple levels of education. And in vocational sectors, it's actually really effective. So we would outline 3 or 4 criteria that were part of a particular part of the assessment, and then really clearly outline what a satisfactory accomplishment looks like and what a not satisfactory accomplishment looks like. And that way the student could see the marking rubric and say, this is what they want me to talk about. And this, if I do it this way, I get this question correct. And the assessor would do the exact same thing. They would use the rubric to mark the student's response. And if the rubric was satisfied, then everyone wins. And if the rubric wasn't satisfied, we could pinpoint specifically on the rubric where the student had gone wrong, as well as give them actual feedback as well. So this approach was, one, to bring in reliability, because if the question allows for multiple valid responses, how do we ensure consistency with the assessors? Because if the students can be varying in their response, the assessors are equally subjective in their grading efforts. So we needed to have some sort of consistency that everyone did kind of rotate around. And that was the rubric. Visible to all, very clear, and relevant for each part of the assessment task. And the actual accuracy of everything just exploded afterwards. So version 2 of the assessment, when we started introducing rubrics, all of a sudden the students' responses were very accurate because they were following the rubric, and the assessor's grading was really accurate and consistent too. So this was a really interesting way to do it, especially when we started asking more depth in the question.
Love it. Doesn't really need more to that, I don't think. Essentially, this is about clear, concise instruction, information, and just a well-written assessment. Absolutely. Put in benchmarks, put in that information into the learner's hand. How do we ask them to drive from point A to point B when we don't tell them what point B is? Yeah, very, very good. And definitely a strategy I've seen across lots of different industries. And when we're talking some of these strategies, they are certainly by no means restricted to the theory component here. We're not talking about how do we thwart AI in just our knowledge component. These strategies can absolutely apply to the majority, if not all, of your assessment processes and approach. But yeah, love it. And these kind of guidance, if we're doing a practical observation, if we're doing something in the workplace, if we're doing something on the tools, all of this should be still very relevant. If I'm observing Miles today, wouldn't I want to be really clear around what good looks like, and give some examples of how that's achieved? Really good quality approaches to it for sure. So strategy 5, open-ended, exploratory. Talk us through.
Well, this kind of lends itself back to the contextualization of the question, where the student can talk about more experiential accounts. We don't need to be avoidant of just asking them the direct question, what do you think? Or what do you believe? Or what do you see? Or what do you understand? We can ask them directly in the assessment to gauge what they do understand. So tying this together with the earlier concepts, allowing for a variety of ways to convey understanding. Like even criticism, we use that as well. So we even said, what do you criticize about this particular topic? And we understood that that still was a capture of knowledge, because a learner would need to understand the topic enough to criticize it. So being more creative with the orientation of the question, to say, rather than being direct and saying, tell us this, and then hoping that they get that answer right based on a marking guide, answer must include or may include but not limited to. Being more open, and this is where the rubric really does come in, because things that do become open-ended still need guidelines. So this one works hand in hand with the rubrics, but it takes away the problem of one correct response. And that's what the students are often really anxiously hunting for, is the correct response. And what we find in any sense is that the correct response today is not the correct response tomorrow. So we should be less focused on finding the single correct response and ask ourselves, can the student show us that they will understand this topic beyond today?
Love it. We're going to move to strategy 6 just so we can get everything in on time. For that one, strategy 5, if I put my compliance hat on, I feel a bead of sweat running down my forehead. I'm sure there's lots of conversation to be had with that one. And absolutely very valid still. Strategy 6, contextualization. We've touched on contextualization. It's a big favorite of mine. I've seen lots of resource, lots of assessment process over the years. Rarely see this one done really well when we start unpacking some of these strategies, when we talk about that learner-centric approach and stuff. Not going to lie, usually underwhelmed in this space. But contextualization, Miles, what's it about for us?
Well, one of the strengths of the vet sector is how close it is to the workplace. So whenever you can, lean on that if the student has access to a real workplace or an environment that they're working in alongside their actual education. So if they are working somewhere and it reflects what they're being taught, really lean into that and say, use your actual experience if you're currently involved. Encourage them to share situations or stories or environments, occurrences. Link it as much to the question as possible. And again, it relates to that psychology of make it a question that the student wants to answer rather than making it a question, that the student is just looking for the answer.
Love it.
Like make the
Let me throw you under the bus with a challenge here, Miles.
Sure.
Talk to me in the setting of a short course. I'm delivering first aid today. I've got 1 unit of competency. Make this real for me. How does that look?
There was a time where I delivered first aid, and the first question I would ask everyone in the class was, who here has seen or been part of a serious first aid incident? And everyone put their hand up because at least they've seen it or been part of it or been affected by it. So that alone is one small token of experience that you can lean on as well. So finding that commonality, everyone has some sort of experience or lived experience or worked experience if they think hard enough. And as minute as that might be, it's something rather than nothing. And that can be used to color the rest of their participation in the assessment.
I love it. And this really brings in one of the other pillars. I know we're focused on assessment design, but when we talk about the education, when we talk about real, and we talk about bringing quality set of processes, enabling our trainers around this, that's a big part of the education piece. How do we unlock those real experiences and there and then in our delivery contextualize that? I love it. Our assessment, though, has got to be super, super on point to be able to be molded to that requirement as we apply it, for sure. Love it. Strategy 7, use and critique.
So this one works in the higher areas of the AQF sector. So say AQF level, sorry. So diploma or advanced diploma respond really well to this because it does require that level of critical judgment. But there is this idea of AI literacy now, not digital literacy, AI literacy. And because everyone uses AI in almost every single sense, my phone is littered with AI and it keeps trying to interrupt everything I do. Everyone that works on a computer is using AI for everything. Workplaces are expecting that graduates understand how to use AI effectively, because when used well, it can increase well. When used poorly, it shows the exact same opposite effect too. So certain courses may allow for this to be done openly through the assessment, where learners can critique AI by using it, and that being part of the knowledge capture of a topic. So case by case for this one, but definitely effective in the course that use it.
Absolutely. Brings us back to those core pieces of do's and don'ts. Let's talk about it. Let's understand it. Absolutely. And again, big part of this is the education piece. Lots of content covered in other webinars, lots of really good stuff coming from different houses there. Strategy 8, self-reflection and direction.
So this links again to the multiple strategies before. Narratives links to this, exploratory links to this. Asking questions where students are allowed to change their mind is when I saw this happen. So at certain points of a course, I would introduce a reflective exercise that gave the student the ability to change their mind on a previous answer. So the question would even say, based on your answers throughout this block or cluster, you have been talking about these topics. Now, after coming to the end of this block, how have your thoughts changed, and what would you do differently? And this ability to kind of re-say what they said originally was a knowledge capture in itself. It showed growth. It showed that the learner had grown from day 1 to day 10. So it showed that they actually had gained more knowledge, and it was almost like a stamp that said, the student has now reached another point of progress. We want them to be up here still, but they've also reached a step closer to it. So driving this self-reflective idea through every part of the actual unit and asking them what they would do moving forward, again, was capturing that competency moving forward rather than competency of the day, which is a term that I dislike significantly. Competency moving forward is far more constructive.
Love it. Final strategy, strategy 9, adult learning principles. Okay.
I'll be quick with this one because I'm mindful of time as well, and I can get away with these topics sometimes. So the adult learning, yeah, usually that's you, Alex, not me. So
you're not wrong.
Yeah, you're the diva. I'm not like this. So the adult learning principles that we all learn about when we learn about vocational education, they're done really well in training. In training, there's a lot about self-direction. There's a lot about orientation, motivation, experience. We do that really well as trainers. But again, the assessment doesn't seem to echo any of it. It seems devoid of any humanity, and it seems so functional. So why not bring those similar ideas into the assessment design as well? So when students read a certain part of the assessment, it speaks to them in the same way the trainer would speak. In fact, in these particular assessments that I built, the preamble that I would write before every assessment task was written in the first person. I would write it as if I was speaking to the student. So that way the student, when they would read it, they could still hear their trainer. They can hear their trainer in the assessment talking to them the way they would be in class. And it made the assessment less isolating. And it gave it a warmth and a feeling where the student wanted to answer because they realized that I was still there, rather than them sitting miles away, looking at a laptop at 10 p.m. They could feel that training. I was still there behind all of it. So the adult learning principles, mirror them in the assessment, either by design or by process or by facilitation, so that the student feels like they're still part of the same process.
Fantastic. Some of those things just so easy to overlook. It is a combination of all these little pieces that pull together with what purpose, what intent, is it fit for purpose? Does it align to my audience? Is it contextualized? Fantastic assessment outcome usually. Love it. Great experience share, Miles. It was fantastic. So give us a bit of a summary. What did that do for us?
So the course that we did this for and designed, interestingly, the feedback was paramount all the way through. We had 15. We had 15 cohorts over the course of 2 years almost. And each one averaged about 13 to 14 students. And they were very vocal all the way through. We encouraged it. We said, we want feedback all the way through because this is a new way of doing things. And what we noticed was that the assessments were being completed faster. The students, they said that there was less fatigue around it because it didn't feel like they had to work for their answers. The answers came more naturally because it was about them. Over time as well, there was less reliance on AI. As the learners learned about it as well, they realized that AI was less of a tool because they had an easier time just using their own experience, their own understanding, their own opinions. And this all added to the authenticity that we were hoping to capture the whole time. That was the goal the whole time. How can we look at something and be comfortable with the authenticity for it? And the people on both sides were quite satisfied. The students found it better once they realized that was the pattern of things. They could just be speaking freely. We did video essays at this point. So we'll give the student a cluster of concepts and say, give us a 4 to 5 minute video essay of your understanding of this in the context of your world. And they would freely just speak and provide a video essay. And we would use the rubric to guide the grading for that video essay. And it was much easier in both regards, both in fatigue for writing, because writing is fatiguing. We can't avoid that. So video essays were less fatiguing. And also for literacy, interestingly enough, LLM was well addressed, and it allowed for more learners to participate, as well as those with complex learning needs. I had a number of neurodiverse students over the years, and their feedback was unexpected. They found it easier to speak about something rather than having to write and structure something.
I love
So
it.
yeah,
These are
the feedback was great.
great outcomes. How do you measure what that impact has with AI? You can see it in the results, you can see it in the engagement, and the quality of the interaction and input is a quick, easy measure. But there's plenty more stuff to sort of evolve on that. We're not trying to unpack all of that today. If we were, we'd have you for a long time, but got lots of thoughts and lots of information to share in future sessions, I'm sure. So the stats, 4 days to complete, 95% authenticity, 95% retention rates. These are the measures, these are the outcomes that you should be really proud of in that course delivery. Fantastic way forward. Benefits, high retention completion, genuine learning, future-proof delivery. Again, tick, tick, tick. That's what we want. What underpins this? Lots of information to go with it too. Compliance and standards align with the principles of assessment, rules of evidence. So many times today I've wanted to talk about both of these. I didn't want to detract from your experience share. Principles of assessment, rules of evidence absolutely have to underpin it. When we talk about compliance, it's exactly one of those pieces that we have to balance and how we approach it. Some takeaways: you do get the slide packs, you do get the copy of the recording and stuff, but takeaway: redesign one assessment this month. Why don't we all challenge ourselves to do it? Let's have a look at what we can do. Maybe share that with some colleagues, maybe share that across our groups. Apply at least 2 strategies. I'd love to think that there's a couple of things in there for everybody. We're all at different stages in our journey. We've all got lots of external pressure, business pressure, commercial pressures, but we're all in it to really drive great outcomes for our learner first and foremost. That would be really good to see. Measure and share those results. That measure result, keen to have some more insights into that. There is a fantastic sorts of ways you can measure it. Again, very, very unique to how you approach this and what you apply. Q&A, we have had loads of interaction, loads of stuff starting, comments and stuff. We'll hang around for getting to some of those key ones as quickly as we can. We're very close to time, but we will talk through some of those if you'd like to hang around and stuff. Miles, I'd love to thank you as well. You very, very genuine, open experience share. There's no commercial benefit for you to do this. You're doing a great service there, and it's awesome to have you part of the team. On the screen there, QR code, a bit of a content piece. Definitely scan it, have a look. Really, really keen to engage with you as well much further. There is an email coming at the end, post webinar, which will give you all the information you need in regards to getting your certificate, getting copies of the recording, and having a look at the deck. At the beginning of this session, I promised you it would be coming from a different angle, something a bit different, not the typical AI that you've seen and heard talked about in so many sessions. I hope it was really, really valuable for you. It looks like a lot of you had some great takeaways. I really thank you all for engaging as well. The commentary, the Slido interactions, perfect, brilliant. Okay, so for the Q&A, Miles, you've got a couple of stars. Should we give it a minute or two, just as we wrap up?
Yeah, there's some really good questions here. Let's have a look.
Awesome questions.
This one highlighted by Kat is really cool. I like this one about students that have credit transfers, so could that interrupt the story arc? In a way, if it would, if you didn't think about it ahead of time. So I would create story arcs that were broader through the course. So say you build out your training assessment sequence in your TAS, and then any credit transfers would normally be in early units rather than later units. Although somebody might come in from another place, they might have a unit from another institution. So having the story arcs broad enough where no matter where the student is, they can pick up the life cycle of where they are in the course. So rather than having it read definitive saying this unit is speaking to this unit, you can have it broader saying this is the life cycle of where you are at this point. Almost if you thought if you were inducting someone. If you were inducting someone into the role, you would start with the broad topics first and become more specified towards the end. So the story arc could be almost similar to that. You could follow the same induction kind of sequence of things. And that
Yeah,
way, yeah, it can mitigate that problem of credit transfers in there.
I can share a bit of experience on this one. I looked at a course that was very much in this kind of storytell delivery. And it came back to some of the core strategies that we've just talked about. It's about great instruction, being really clear what we want. Part of that instruction is a bit of a recap. This is where we're at in the story for this unit. You know, this is what we might have covered so far. And if we haven't, bit of background to it. Let's give great quality resource and information to bring in, you know, our learner, the person consuming that story, to make it still very relevant as well. Plus, could we not even perhaps look at story within the unit, within the topic, within the subject? Not necessarily just has to be at that top level, overarching qualification or course level as well. So lots of strategies you could apply there. Love the challenge of credit transfer. Credit transfer in a train out course can be really clunky if we're not prepared for it. So absolutely, Miles, you nailed it there with great planning, great prep, and anticipation of that's exactly what might happen in the real world. Awesome. Now,
this question around rubrics is this question around rubrics.
Yeah.
It'll be at a unit level. We exercise this at a unit level, or we were clustering at the same time too. So we were clustering units together to make the assessment have a smaller footprint. So that was a big part of this that we didn't quite talk about, but clustering is something that adds to this process. But if you do go down to a unit level granularly, then you can do it at a unit level. And that way it's reflective of each instrument that you're using. So if you use multiple knowledge instruments, each of those instruments would have a rubric attached to it, structurally speaking.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, Miles, we could go all day talking about the questions that have been raised. It's been really, really good to spend some time and discuss it. For anybody left in the call, I'm the lucky one. I get Miles every single day. Miles is the unlucky one. He gets me every single day. But I really appreciate your participation, folks. We're going to wrap there and look out for the post session email. Awesome.